There you go.
Excellent. Wow. Here we are. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. My name is Devin Rossiter, a part of the London 19 cohort with the Innovator Program. Currently, I work as a professional development specialist with Dreambox Learning, supporting personalized and adaptive math education for K through 8. But prior to that, I worked as an academic coach, as a district-wide instructional specialist, a classroom educator at Bakersfield City School District, and I've had multiple roles in media. I co-host a television program where students call in with homework problems. We work it out live on the air, utilizing discourse and um, conceptual modeling and strategies. I've also presented at conferences across the country and here in the U.S. and globally over the course of the last 5 years or so. And so, being able to focus on supporting educators through the lens of multiple different mediums has been an extremely interesting journey. And especially over the last couple of years, we've had the opportunity to explore different formats of interaction and engagement across mediums. And everybody feels like an expert, but we still wish we could engage more. And so I want to thank you so much for being here for our conversation. No mic, no camera, no problem. We're going to burn through a quick and rapid 20 minutes here. And I'm thrilled to have you in this space. And we got a lot in store for you. It's going to move fast, but you're going to walk away with quite a bit of good information that is actionable. So let's talk a little bit first about what our focus is going to be in regards to. We want to first talk a little bit about why chat is so valuable in these types of new environments. And this can be instructional, but it can also be through the lens of professional development. When we are sharing quality content and information and we're leading these conversations through video conferencing tools or otherwise, how do we leverage the chat box as a powerful means of honoring participant and student voice? In addition to that, we're going to talk a little bit about some strategies and actually use some of them here in our space that utilize the chat window regarding some of the strategies that I'm hoping to share with you. And then we'll also share and discuss some other ideas on how you've utilized it so that we can best leverage the experience and wisdom that we have. What do we say? The smartest person in the room is the room. So we know that there is a big struggle sometimes in regards to broad engagement. We know that if we do have a remote setting, let's say we're delivering professional development and educators are in multiple different spaces, or if we are still supporting students who may be in a remote environment, that we struggle with making sure they're a part of the learning. And, we've seen some solutions in regards to mandating that cameras get turned on and how that can be very damaging to a student's well-being as far as, their sense of empowerment. We know that not every student is comfortable or has the ability to utilize a microphone in a quiet environment. And so what's been really interesting is seeing, especially with students, how the chat has almost kind of been, um, a use if I have to. And I've seen so many classrooms that I've been able to kind of observe and support where educators just completely shut the option off. And the rationale is, well, I can't trust that they're going to use it respectfully, and I want to just avoid dealing with the nonsense so I can just keep going. And so by removing the opportunity to utilize chat, they remove the opportunity for students to learn how to utilize chat. It's kind of like the scalpel dilemma. In seventh grade with science, students might start dissecting frogs, but a lot of science teachers now are wary of this. Well, I don't know if I could trust them with the scalpel. Well, okay, fine. Well, then you're never going to let them use the tool, and then they're going to prove you right because you've never provided them with a chance. Now, the reason that the chat can be so powerful is because it is a quick means of gauging and inviting a running conversation. It protects a lot of your users' dignity as far as the space they may inhabit, and it minimizes the barriers that might apply as far as other distractions. We know that when there's multiple people trying to talk over each other in a remote environment, mics get cut off. Not everybody's using a headphone. It can be very cacophonous. And so there's a lot of leverage in this. But as far as how to use chats meaningfully, there are a lot of kind of gray areas. So I wanted to step outside. Anytime I look for strategies in regards to presentation outside of my media experience, I try to look outside of the education realm. And one of the names I've been following and I've had the opportunity to interact with over the last couple of years is a woman by the name of Jenny Sauer Klein. She is the founder of Scaling Intimacy and Play on Purpose. So she runs professional workshops on running professional workshops, not only so that people feel more engaged with the work that's being done, but when we talk about intimacy, it's that sense of feeling like the experience is for you, that you're invited to be a part of it. And that's a term that comes up quite a bit. So what I wanted to do to kind of kick things off with a lens on our conversation is I wanted to share this video that I got to record with Jenny Sauer Klein as part of her AMA on the topic of digital engagement through a lot of workshops or professional development. I shared some of my concerns that I have in regards to education and making sure that we utilize the chat box because it's something that's there no matter what the platform is. And so listen in on the conversation. And as you do, refer to this question here on the right side. What actions can help engage audiences through the chat feature? Be prepared to respond to that. And I'm going to be very specific on how we do so after we observe the video here. So here's myself with Jenny Sauer Klein from Scaling Intimacy and Play on Purpose.
I think that the chat is awesome. I am intimidated by thinking around how to recreate chat in person because I've come to rely on it so much and I think it's so valuable. I've actually thought about going back to in-person programs and like just getting a personal whiteboard for each person so they can write their thing and hold it up so I can see it. I'm trying to think about how do I do this because it's so awesome. And I love the chat, and in Scaling Intimacy, we utilize it a lot. Some people love it. Some people find it distracting and overwhelming. And they're like, it's just too much, especially when you get a lot of people. The chat stream moves really quickly. And they're like, I can't, watch slides or listen to content and watch the chat. So whenever I introduce chat, I would, a couple things. One, I would start with it right off the bat at the beginning of your session, just like we did here, where I just asked you that really quick high and low for the week. So you're setting the tone, A, for engagement, and B, that chat is going to be a significant tool that you want to use. So you're priming people because when they're jumping on the session, they're like, how is this going to work? Like, what are the rules here? What's the culture? What's the vibe? And you're saying, we're going to engage, we're going to contribute, and we're going to do it in the chat. So I would say just start your session off that way to set the tone. And again, chat's always going to be opt-in, right? We're not forcing people to do chat, but we can encourage people to use the chat, right? So thinking about what are the ways in which you're inviting them in and drawing them in and giving them levels of opt-in or levels of disclosure, basically, right? Where it's not a super deep question right off the bat, but we're easing them into that experience. So that's one thing. And then secondly, and then I would also tell people, hey, if the chat's really helpful and you enjoy being in the chat, utilize it. And I'm going to be reading and responding. I think it's important to set up expectations for how the chat's going to be used and how you are going to engage with the chat, right? So here in the beginning, like I was saying, like I'm going to be verbally responding and I invite you all to be commenting, right? So inviting people, I think some people won't necessarily offer, but they will respond to someone else, right? So what is the container? Is it that I've been asked questions and I'd like you to respond in the chat. And if you see someone else's comment, you want to add a +1, you want to add a thumbs up, right? What are the ways in which you can invite them to participate in the chat that might not even be directly with you? One of the huge things that I find, and it sounds simple and stupid, but that really activates people in the chat is using the emojis and the emoticons. And I don't know if any of you have updated your Zoom, but now they have a very robust emoji menu. So when I also, there's like a way to get in your menu if people don't have that. You do on Mac, it's Control Command Spacebar, and on a window, and a PC, it's Windows and the period. So you can always activate the menu. But I will tell you, like, once I show people that they can use emojis, it's like a party in this in the chat.
Yeah, that ends up being the thing that they take away in their feedback.
Right?
Like the most important thing I learned.
Right.
Windows
They love
period.
it. People
That's
love
the
it.
thing. Oh, okay. All right. I'm glad you
Exactly.
picked something up. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that shows us is that, you know, everyone has this sense that online is boring and dull. So how do we create opportunities to make it fun and engaging? And emojis are fun. They're fun and playful, and we don't generally associate that with this kind of platform. So I think that's a really good indication. Like, how do I make this fun? How do I make it interactive? How do I make it enjoyable? That's going to really start to light people up. So emojis are another thing I would play with. And then beyond the chat, I don't know to what degree you use polls and things like that, but just thinking about other forms of engagement that are not video. Polls, I think, are huge. I use polls a lot and I find them really helpful. Again, I also think you can have fun with the poll. Word clouds, I don't know if you've used those, but the like Mentimeter is one external application. Quizzes, you can do rank orders. I mean, I think if you get creative, you can do a lot of things that do not rely on video, but I would say continue to try to change it up, because if you're in a 2-hour session and chat is the only form of interaction, you know, anything that we rely on too much is going to get dull and boring for our audience. Even if it's like we're having a dance party, people generally don't want a dance party for 2 hours unless that's specifically what they came for. So that's just something to consider, is like, how can you keep mixing up your forms of engagement that utilize the chat, but that are not just typing in the chat.
I appreciate how you frame that as invite versus expect. I think a lot of times people come in and they're in these sessions not because they want to be, but because they're told they have to be. And so inviting them in to make it their own and lower that sense of like imposition, I think is very valuable as far as. So that's actually the lead into the first point I wanted to mention. And you heard Jenny Sauer Klein use that term invite quite a bit. I found as a math instructor that when students are invited to utilize a strategy that you share with them, instead of being told you have to do it this way, they're more likely to own it and feel like it is theirs to utilize. And when students feel like they have developed and owned their own process, they're much more likely to use it more, especially if they feel like they've stumbled upon it as if it's some sort of hidden secret. So when you invite somebody to utilize the chat in regards to setting expectations, it sets everything up to be more successful. So you'll have less silence. When you communicate right off the bat, and I love how she said, like, the first thing, if you're going to use chat, make sure it's right in. When you start off a session, have something that people can respond to in the chat after you've set that expectation. Especially when we're talking about, the role that audio can play and people coming off mic, communicating how people can interact. Because as much as we want that interaction, we still want to make sure we're facilitating the conversation. Now, one way to do this is very helpful. We had a question come through earlier that was attached to the video. What actions can help engage audiences through the chat feature? And so I want you to keep that question in mind. What I'd like you to do is respond to that question. Type in your solution, type in your response to it, but don't hit enter. Respond to that chat question, but don't hit enter. What actions can help engage audiences through the chat feature? Don't hit enter yet. And then on the count of 3, everybody hit enter at the same time. This way, nobody has to worry about being the first one or seeing somebody else type in their answer and then feeling like they don't have a chance to respond. So I'm giving you about 15 more seconds. What actions can help engage audiences through the chat feature? Don't hit enter yet. All right, let's see how this goes, everybody. Go ahead and hit enter in 3, 2, 1. Starting to see some of these come through. Isn't that interesting, right? So this is very helpful in a couple of ways. One, it gives people time to process a response instead of that awkward Are you going to type or am I going to type? You start waiting for somebody. It's okay to be awkward in your pauses because you trust that the time given is going to come in return. So we see that sense of encouragement, some questioning strategies, the idea of a pause, don't hit enter to rush it. That way, if you see multiple people put the same response, especially in regards to a student focused, student centered, student facing conversation, that's great formative assessment information if you see broad information on what people think on the topic. So this is a second tip here called the chat blast. This invites more people to utilize their voice. It's not a race to see who gets the right answer first. And it lets you address different perspectives based off of what stands out. And the third element in that regard is what you noticed as part of that chat blast is the timing. If you have opportunities for question and answer or momentary opportunities to pause and see if there are chances for people to ask clarifying questions, make sure you have that extended pause time so that attendees can respond in the chat. They can post their questions. They can make it worthwhile. One other thing I might even throw in there and recommend and advise. This goes back into timing. Sometimes you don't have the opportunity to pause and allow people to come in. Here's what I will throw out there as far as communicating the expectations and the invitations in regards to questions that may arise. As we use the chat for our interaction, I'm going to invite you to throw any questions that you have into the chat. But when you do so, I do so with one wrinkle. When you type in your question, please type it in all caps. And I know that I can see some reactions there. Oh boy, people are yelling on the internet. All caps is great for questions because that chat box can move pretty quickly. And so when I see a question coming in all caps, it's going to grab my attention because of the way I have things set up. And I'm going to be able to at least keep it in mind, find a spot to respond to it efficiently and effectively, and I could bring it to the attention of the group faster. And I will not perceive it as being yelled at on the internet. I used to work in professional sports broadcasting. I've been yelled at on the internet plenty, so don't worry about it. That actually works very well because now there's a clarity of structure in regards to how to utilize the chat for questioning. Now, sometimes you don't always want or have the time for extended responses. So here's another one. Fill in the Now, this might work very well with the chat blast, but if you really want, again, varying the ways that you could engage audiences with the chat or students, you don't always need a big response. So provide a prompt where there's one word missing. Leave it open-ended. It doesn't always have to be a straight up, there's a correct answer. It could be a broad sense of how do you perceive something. But sometimes just one word is very insightful. And to build on the ideas of word clouds, it can be multiple entries. You don't have to enter just one word and see what comes through. And lastly, this gets underutilized is the question and answer feature. And I feel like a lot of people forget that it's there. It's in Meet, but sometimes if you're utilizing other tools, it can be very clunky. So I would recommend certainly giving the presenter view with Q&A in mind. So if you're unfamiliar with this, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that the window is up instead of just the tab here, because I think this is very helpful to have. So what you'll see is on your presenter view, you have an option for audience tools. And here is where you'll see Q&A features. So I'll click Start New. When you do so, a short link appears at the top of your presentation, your slide deck, and that appears all the way throughout. And then as people enter questions, you'll be able to see them come through. Other participants will see the other questions as well. And then if this is hidden off to the side, you can actually select a question that you would like to share and address. It'll click up and then it will take over your slide deck and the question will appear so you can address it. It's a very helpful and engaging tool. It also allows users to give a thumbs up to questions that they would like to see more attention drawn to. So it's going to give you a clear view, especially if there's a lot of questions coming through on what to pay attention to. And so it's another great way to focus literally on chat. And it requires a lot of trust. to focus on chat as the main means of interaction during a remote session. But when you have that trust, then you have the people. Hey, these have been moving great. Go ahead and hop over to the next session. Thanks for coming, everybody. Reach out to me at Devin Rossiter or at my website, devinrossiter.com. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.